Hey guys, so we're going to be looking at the exam practice paper and we're going to work through each question individually to help you with your exam. So let's start with question 1. Now, what does question 1 cover? It covers everything in algebra. You know, the really easy stuff like factorising, using your quadratic formula, doing inequalities, and solving simultaneously. So all the questions that we are going to cover in this playlist or in these videos come from the Department of Education's November 2022 Paper 1 exam. You can easily download this from their website by just searching November 2022 maths exam. So question 1.1 says solve for x, and we've got several different questions that we are going to solve for x. So I'm going to grab a pen here. And as you can see, this question is already factorized for you. So it's really simple. This is equal to 0, or this part over here is equal to 0. So we solve them individually. So we'll have 3x minus 6 is equal to 0, or x plus 2 is equal to 0. So on this side, we take the 6 to the other side, so it becomes a positive. Remember, you change sides when you go over the equal sign, and we're going to divide by 3 on both sides, because what you do to one, you do to the other. So we have x is equal to 2. On the side, it's even more straightforward. We're just going to take the 2 to the other side. So we're just going to have x is equal to, and we change the sign, minus 2. So you've got 2 marks, and you get 1 mark for that answer and 1 mark for that answer. The next one says solve for x, and then it says correct to 2 decimal places. So that tells us, or is an immediate hint, that we need to use our quadratic equation. So our quadratic equation is x is equal to negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac. And you can find this on your formula sheet, but I really recommend just learning it off by heart, because it makes things so much easier and so much quicker. And when you know the formula, you know easily how to substitute into it. So this is our a, this is our b. Don't forget the sign in front as well, and our c value. So we're just going to substitute in. So negative b is positive 6 plus or minus 6. Well, it's negative 6 squared. I'll put it all in there just to be careful. Minus 4a is 2 and c is 1. And that's all under a root sign. And then we have 2 times 2. Now here we can just plug this into your calculator. So I'm just going to grab my calculator quickly. I'm going to just share it next to, we've lost our writing. Great. So what we're going to do is we're just going to plug it in. So we'll have 6 plus square root, and then we'll have negative 6 squared. Now just remember to use your negative button and not your minus button when doing the sum. And then when we do minus 4, we use the minus button. 4, a is 2, and c is 1 over 2 times 2. And that gives us 3 plus square root 7 over 2. And if we change that, 2, 8, 2. Round it off, you can see that the 2 is less than 5, so it just stays the same. Now for the next answer, instead of having to retype all of this, press your left arrow key, and then press second function left, and that will take you right to the front. And then just back a little bit, backspace to delete the plus, add in a minus instead, and say equals, and there's our second solution. And we can change that. So 0,7, and here it rounds up to 0,18. So when we fill this in on our calculator or on our exam paper, once we've done the equation, we're just going to write our final solution as x is equal to 3 plus square root 7 over 2, or x is equal to 3 minus square root 7 over 2. And then, of course, it asks for decimal places. So we're going to say 2,8,2 and 1,0,1,8. And here you've got 3 marks. So there's 1 mark for the substituting into the equation, 1 mark for this answer, and 1 mark for that answer. So again, I've just put this in just so that you can see that it is right at the top of your information sheet. So it's quite easy. You can normally tear off your information sheet or your formula sheet at the beginning of the exam and just keep it next to you throughout the exam, especially if you're nervous about forgetting any of your formulas. Now, this question here is a inequality. So the first step is to bring x to the other side by using a minus or a plus. We cannot divide by x because we don't know the sign, and the sign could change our inequality sign. So you can only move an x or an unknown across by adding or subtracting. So we'll have x squared minus x minus 90 is greater than 0. And here we can see that this is a trinomial. So we're just going to factorize it quickly. And we're going to have x and x. And we can see factors of 90. And we could write them down: 1 and 90, 2 and 45, 3 and 30. Does 4 go into 90? No. 5 goes into 90. 1 carry 18 times, so on. And then you'll see that you get 9 and 10, which gives us 1. So we're going to put in a 9 and a 10, and we have different signs. We've got a minus at the back, so we have different signs, and a minus in front of x, which means our biggest factor has the minus and our smaller one has the plus. So now we've got these critical values. So we've got x could be -9 or x could be 10, right? But this is an inequality. So we haven't stopped. We haven't finished yet, right? So what we then do is draw our parabola. And this graph here is a parabola, x squared minus x minus 90. So we just draw our happy smiley face. And we'll put in our critical value. So we've got -9 over here and 10 on this side. Right, now it's saying greater than 0, which is above this line. So where's the graph above the line? It's over here, and it's over here. So what that tells me is that it's going to be in that direction and in that direction. So in other words, x is greater, as you see the direction, than 10, and x is, and you see the less than -9. Cool. So that's inequalities, quite straightforward. Remember to draw your graph or your table method, whichever method that you use. You will get marks for any of them. Also, 4 marks. So 1 for doing your standard form of your equation. So that's the mark over there. Let me change colors just so you can see. It's 1 mark for the standard form of the equation. And then 1 mark for your critical values. So 1 mark each. And then finally a mark here. Well, it's 1 mark for both of them. So half a mark each. And then 1 mark for this one here. And 1 mark for this one here. So you've got a total of 4 marks. Now 1.1.4 has got a surd in it. So there's 2 ways to solve this, and I'm going to do the way that is most straightforward for me and easiest. So what you would do is actually take your surd to the other side, and you'll bring your 12 across. So we'll have x plus 12 is equal to 7 square root x. And we actually just want to get rid of that square root sign. So to get rid of the square root, we square. But what we do to one side, we need to do to the other side. You can't just square the x and nothing else. That would make it unbalanced. So here we've got a trinomial that comes out. So we've got x squared, x times 12 is 12x, times 2 is 24x. I call that the Mickey D's rule. See my M? And then 12 squared is 144. And on this side, we've got 7 squared is 49, and we just have an x. Now we bring this to the other side, so we've got x squared, and we've got plus 24x minus 49x, and that leaves us with 25x plus 144 is equal to 0. And again, we've got a trinomial, so we're going to factorize it. So here we go, x and x. Now I can see that the sign at the back is a plus, so my signs are the same, and they're both going to be minuses. So that means I'm adding my factors of 144 together to reach 25. And that factor is 9 and 16. So 9 and 16. So that means x is equal to 9, oopsie, equal sign, or x is equal to 16. Okay, now guys, I did pre-work out these factors before I did the video just to save time. So to find factors of 144, again, just list them. Otherwise, you can use your calculator. So very quickly, I'll show you how to do that. So if you're looking for factors of 144, you would press mode, 2 for table, and you're going to use function 1. So you'll type in 144, press your fraction button, press X or your RCL button twice to make an X. So what we're doing essentially is asking the calculator to list all the factors of 144. So 1 goes into 144, 144 times. 2 is 72, 3 and 48, 4 and 36. So now what we're going to do is add these two together to see if we can find 25. So 4 and 36 is obviously 40. 5 is not a factor because it has a decimal. 6 and 24 gives us 30, so we're getting closer. 7 is not a factor. 8 and 18 give us 26, so really close, but not quite. 9 and 16 give us 25. So there we go. So this is our set of factors. And you can see the calculator is really unlimited, so you can really go for as long as you like without running out of space, which makes it really easy to find factors. So if that's something that you struggle with, it's a great way to find your factors. So the next question is to solve simultaneously. So we've been given two equations. And so what we would do is label one equation with equation 1 and equation 2. Now, neither of these have x or y by themselves. So I'm going to take equation 1 and manipulate it. So I'll have 2x minus 2 is equal to y. And I'm going to call this equation 3. And the reason that I label my equations is so that when I'm doing substitutions, I know which equation I'm actually working with. So now also it helps your marker figure out what you're doing. So now we're going to substitute equation 3 into equation 2. Right? So we'll have x times, and now our y is now 2x minus 2 is equal to 4. So we've got x times 2x is 2x squared minus 2x, and we'll bring the 4 to the other side, becomes minus 4 is equal to 0. Now you can see that 2 is a common factor for all of these, so I'm going to divide everything by 2. I'm just going to go back up to the side over here. Right, so I'll now have x squared minus x and minus 2 is equal to 0. Remember, 0 divided by anything is still 0. So now I can see that this is a trinomial, and I'll factorize it yet again. And I'll have x and x. I've got a minus sign at the back, which tells me that my signs are different. Now, the only factors of 2 are 2 and 1. So I'm going to put in 2 and I'm going to put in 1. Because the minus is in the front, I'm going to keep the minus with my bigger factor and the plus with my smaller factor. So now we have x is equal to 2 or x is equal to minus 1. So that's part 1, but we still need to find y. So we'll go back and we'll substitute these answers into 3 because that's simplified already. So we have y is equal to 2 times 2 minus 2 gives us 2, and y is equal to 2 times minus 1 minus 2 gives us minus 4. And so your marks here, let me change colors for you so you can see. You've got 1 mark for changing or rearranging the equation so that y is by itself. You've got a mark for substituting in, so the step here. You've got a mark for getting it in standard form, which is this trinomial form, right? So there's 3. You've got a mark for getting the x's, and then a mark for getting your correct y values. Great. Last question is about exponential equations. So we're going to say, it says, show that 2 times 5 to the n minus 5n plus 1 plus 5 to the power of n plus 2 is even for all positive integers of n. So step 1 here is just to rewrite this by separating out your exponents. So we're going to have 2 times 5 to the n minus 5 to the n times 5 to the 1, or just 5, plus 5 to the n times 5 to the 2, right? Then you can see, if you look closely, that each of these has a 5 to the n. So I'm actually going to take that out as a common factor. So I'm left with 2 minus 5 plus 5 squared. And I'm just going to chuck that quickly into my calculator, and that will give me an answer of 22. So I have 5n times 22. Now 22 is really actually 2 times 11, right? And when you multiply any number by 2, it will always be even. So what you would then say is 5n, it will always be even because it is multiplied by 2. So that's your last part of that answer, and that will also give you a mark. So you've got 1 mark for breaking up your exponents. Then you've got 1 mark for taking out a common factor, and then 1 mark for actually explaining about the multiplication by 2 and making it an even number. Our last question is also an exponential question. And it says, determine the values of x and y, f, and then you're given just 1 equation. Now, normally when we ask to solve for x and y, we have 2 equations. So a lot of students last year got frustrated with this question. But really, there are 2 equations if you break down your exponents. So we've got, I'm just going to break everything down. So we've got 3 to the y times 3 to the 1. And 32 is really 2 to the power of 5. And you can find that quickly by doing it on your calculator. So here we'll just go home. We'll type in 32 and press equals, and then say second function and p facts. And that gives us 2 to the 5. Let's do 96 quickly as well. So we've got it. So we've got 96 equals button, second function p facts. And that gives us 2 to the 5 times 3. So back to our question we go. Grab my pen again. Okay, so breaking it down, we've got 3 to the y. I'm just going to do 3 plus y plus 1. Okay, and then 32 we said is 2 to the power of 5. So you can see there's 2 different bases here. Then we've got 96, which was 2 to the 5 times 3, right? So we've got square root of 2 to the power of 5 times 3 all to the power of x and under a square root sign. So again, if we just bring this 5 up, we'll have 3 to the power of y plus 1 times, and this becomes a negative, so it's negative 5, is equal to, and now a square root sign. So firstly, you need to multiply the x in. So let me just do it this side here. So you'll have square root of 2 to the 5x times 3 to the x, right? And when we take the square roots of anything, we actually divide our exponents by a half, right? So we're going to do that here. So here we'll have 2 to the power of 5x over 2, and we'll have 3 to the power of x over 2. Now, can you see that there are actually two separate equations here that we're going to use? We've got the 3's and we've got the 2's. So we can say we've got 3y plus 1 is really equal to 3 times x over 2, which means y plus 1 is equal to x over 2. And for the 2's, we've got negative 5 is equal to 5x over 2. Now, this one only has an x in it, so we'll solve for that first. So we'll multiply by 2, which gives me negative 10 is equal to 5x, and divide by 5. So negative 2 is equal to x. And we'll go back and substitute this back into this equation here. So I'm just going to make a little star because I've run out of space. It's here, right? So we'll have y plus 1 is equal to, and then we've got negative 2 over 2, which is actually negative 1. Right? And then we'll take this to the other side, so that becomes negative 1 as well. So negative 1 minus negative 1 is negative 2. So in fact, both of these exponents are negative 2. Now again, in terms of marks, you're going to have 1 for doing the over 2, okay? Then you're going to have 1 for putting it into this format here. So that's 2 marks there. You'll have 1 mark for finding x and 1 mark for finding y. So thanks for joining us for this first question paper video. Continue watching to see how to answer questions 2 and 3, which is all about patterns and sequences and series. Remember that you can download worksheets from Maths Sharp for free, which have full memos. So if you're looking for help to practice with stuff, take a look.